Welcome to CropCast, a monthly arable podcast. This podcast pulls together the latest information, expertise and experiences from people in the arable industry. I am Tiffany Stephenson, and in today's episode we're going to be discussing Frass, which is a new concept coming from the insect protein market with potential to be used as a fertiliser and can induce systemic resistance against pathogens. We're going to be talking to Arthy, whose post-doctoral research is digging into this, and Lachlan, who is an SAC consultant who's also been part of the project. Arthy, would you like to begin by introducing yourself?
Hi, I'm Arthy Surendran. I'm currently working in Queens University as a lecturer. So I have worked in Frass for last 5 years. So that's me.
And Lachlan?
Hello, I'm Lachlan Jones. I am a trainee consultant in the Cooper office with SAC Consulting. I've previously been a technician in the Crop and Soils Research Department in SRUC in Edinburgh, specialising in crop diseases and soil health.
Excellent. So Arthy, I think we should start with you. How did you end up looking at Frass for the last 5 years?
This has all started in Malaysia during COVID. So we kind of had a mealworm farm, which they have reared mealworm for us bird feed. So we really had a huge waste from oil palm in Malaysia. So we wanted to feed them for mealworms. Can we use that? That's how the project started, because they were using mostly the vegetables. So this project is all started about can we use agricultural waste, which can be turned into a high value protein as well as a biofertilizer. So that's how I entered into this field. Later, I got an opportunity in University of Warwick as a postdoctoral research fellow. So this project is under UKRI. This is an Innovate UK project. So this project is called Insectrial Project. So in this project, we kind of looked at various different ways of how we use the waste, the fruit waste or food waste, to be utilized, and that could be converted into protein by black shoulder fly, and the waste as frass to be a biofertilizer. So that's how I entered it.
It is something that I'll be honest, I know nothing about, and I don't know how insect proteins come about to begin with, and then it leading to Frass. So, what actually is Frass?
Okay. Frass is an excrement of these insects. It's not just the excrement, but also the exoskeleton, which has a very bioactive compounds called chitin. So basically, it is a mixture of excrete plus the chitin and the uneaten food stuff. So these days, alternative protein is getting more attention. So insect industry is gaining more attention as well. So that's why we think Frass could be the fertilizer.
So, you've just looked at it from a type of fly and the waste from the fly.
Fly. Before it turned to be a fly, it will be a larvae. So it's from larvae. So that's the major Frass we are using at this point.
Right, but there's potential for other insects to be producing it as well.
Yeah, currently, you can see entomophagy is not new to the world, actually. Maybe to this part of the world might be, but not to the world. So you can see people are eating all weird insects throughout our cultures and other stuff. Every country has its specialization, but it's all about what the policy approves currently. So at this point, we can feed black shoulder fly only to chickens and fish, but not to poultry. So it depends upon the country's policy as well. So and I'm expecting that to be broadened more, and we will be seeing more insects. For example, currently we are using black shoulder fly, mealworm, and there is silkworm, grasshoppers. There is numerous other insects that could be explored for protein.
Very interesting. So, yeah, today we are going to focus in on Frass. So we've got an idea of where it's come from. You mentioned when you were saying about Frass, you said about chitin. What was chitin?
Chitin, yeah.
Chitin, sorry.
Yes. Chitin is actually an exoskeleton. So it's more like a case for a larvae. So it's a more more like a skin kind of thing, which protects the larvae. So this is made up of a material which is called as chitin. Chitin is a biopolymer. What do I mean by polymer? Is like it's a really long chain and it takes long time to break. So the structure of this chitin is to protect the larvae. So when this larvae is reared, it removes its chitin as it grows more and more. So the exoskeleton is removed as it grows bigger and bigger. So that's why you get more chitin in the frass.
Okay, this is a whole new world to me, but it's very interesting of how it's all come about. So you end up with Frass, and then you've been looking at how you can apply it to crops as well.
Yes. That's the thing, because what we have at the end is like this excrete is almost similar to that of manure. Like we have all the nutrients, not just the macronutrient for the plant, but also the micronutrients. But what makes frass different compared to manure is the presence of chitin. So there are quite a lot of research has been conducted in the world to say chitin can induce resistance in plants. So that's the most key feature of frass, and like that makes it stand alone compared to that of a manure, a normal manure.
As well as the improving resistance within plants, chitin is also got application in fighting PCN, although that's not a big, lots of studies have been done with it, but similar type of things have been tried applying, I think it was shells or seashells to land, which is known to be PCN kind of heavy. And whilst it's maybe not, I don't think there's been conclusive results from it, the idea that the PCN lives within a chitin shell, and if you're introducing chitin from different forms, whether that's from frass or from shells or other things which contain chitin, you're then also encouraging the bugs and beasties which break down chitin, and then if they're there in the field, then they should also move over to attack PCN and break down that chitin, which would then kill the PCN. So there's a few different kind of other ways which chitin can be looked at as well.
So it's definitely something that sounds like it needs more research behind it to go and show what it can potentially do. You said that it can help with resistance in the plants. What sort of things is it resisting against?
That's the thing, we need research more like at this point. But usually what it does is like chitin is an element that's present in all the pathogens, mostly the fungus, the insects and other things. So frass is also an insect derived product. So when you apply that on a plant thinks that is under attack, and it just produces resistant chemicals like to protect itself. So that's how we think like we can prime a plant against pathogens. So at this point, we are really at the preliminary stage to comment on that, but like we are working on it to find like how we can prime the plant against pathogens.
Yeah, so it's kind of got a similar kind of biostimulant aspect to it, and it's one of these things that if you add on to the good nutrition of a plant is kind of the building block of having a good crop, a plant which is capable of fighting off diseases by itself, so you can then have less maybe less spray inputs into it. And it's just getting these kind of almost low-hanging fruit of good nutrition, anything else which you can then give the kind of plant to do as much of its own fighting as it can do, and then you come in with your chemical responses on top of that. So it's about preparing the plant and hopefully giving it as good a start and a good ability to fight off pests and diseases as it can.
There is definitely more and more interest in things that can be biostimulants, just because there's less and less chemicals that can be being used on these plants. So it's interesting that there is so many different options coming available, and it is just a lot of research needed to go in to see exactly how they work. At the beginning, Arthy, you mentioned that they also had a value of nutrients, macronutrients. What sort of values do they have?
Yeah, this all basically depends upon what this larvae has been fed on. For example, when they are feed on waste which contains more potassium, for example, banana peels, like when this larvae is fed on banana and banana peels, it's going to have high potassium. So that would be around like 2 to 3% easily. When they are fed on really nitrogen-rich material like grains, bread, and other stuff, this could be like translated more on the nitrogen. So basically, you can tailor the composition of the frass depending upon the feed what we get. So it's not a consistent product. It's going to be varying batch by batch, but still we could tailor according to the need of the crop and what's our end user is. And like that has to be worked on towards the feeding material for the larvae.
So potentially you could be aiming for high nitrogen, as you said, and feed it lots of cereals. So potentially if you've got cereals with high screenings or it's been contaminated, you could feed that. And then the farmers then got that product at the end to potentially replace some of the fertilizer usage. Am I picking that up correctly?
Yeah, that's what. There are studies being conducted in different research institutes whether they can use this mycotoxins, which is present in the grains, which is like the spoiled bread and other stuff. So research is underway, and like we are still exploring the way whether the mycotoxin is completely broken down or not, like whether this frass is like safe to use. So if that is possible, like we can feed them with the what do you call the spoiled breads and still get the maximum amount of nitrogen to be recycled back to the system.
Yeah. Frass it's kind of the similar vein as farmyard manure in that you feed it to an animal and you get something at the back of the animal. In this case, it's flies, and in farmyard manure cases, it's cattle or pigs or chickens. But it's and the use that it can have on farm is pretty much the same as FYM. It's not going to replace your whole nitrogen use, but it's about using 20 to 25% of your nitrogen use through Frass and then topping it up with your artificial fertilizer. So you're reducing your artificial fertilizer, which is something that for climate wise is being driven, but also the drivers are going to come in the future of cost and availability. We've got far less resources in Britain to make fertilizer than we have to. The fact there's much fewer factories, and the cost of importing fertilizer has gone up significantly in the last few years, in 2022 of course, and in earlier this year with the Iran war. So having something else which can be used in a similar way to farmyard manure to get your nitrogen that you need and then reduce your artificial inputs is just going to drive resilience across the sector, hopefully.
I like that comparison, using it a bit like you would for farmyard manures. I think that makes it very quickly to understand what its purpose would be and where it would be positioned amongst other things on the market. I've definitely noticed in recent years people are wanting to make better use of their farmyard manure, and it's gone from a waste product to a very, very valuable product, which it should have been anyway. So that's a nice comparison.
Yeah, and the good thing is, because this is, our farm manure that we've got already is kind of spoken for. Either folk will use it on farm or they'll use it in straw for dung deals, or chicken and pigs will give it to other farmers. But that's all kind of established. You kind of know, chicken pig producers know where their slurry and hen pen are going. The people who buy it kind of know that's a fairly safe income. But it's for the folk, particularly the arable farmers who either in a place where there's no mixed farms or few chickens around, how do they reduce their artificial fertilizer inputs? And this is the way they can do it. The main sites of the Frass are concentrated down in England at the moment, but there is one in Edinburgh and it is growing, and the availability of it is, the fact it's there is a good thing. And there's also the added benefits of it's got organic matter in it. It's got a little bit of P and a little bit of K. So you're adding, it's exactly the same as FWN, you're adding in, you're improving your organic matter, which is, again, is a good thing. So
how much organic matter is there roughly in it, or what's it more comparable to?
Yeah, I would say it's slightly comparable. Again, it depends upon the feed. So, but like I would say, like 1/3 of it is mostly organic matter. So, yeah,
So it is giving back to the soil as well.
yeah, and the thing is, like, yeah, it is a compound fertilizer, isn't it? It's not just if you consider nitram, it's just an ammonium nitrate, which is the nitrogen source, just that. But like when you go for a Frass, it's more of like a compound fertilizer. It's just not one macronutrient alone. So that's what makes it slightly different. Yeah.
So with more insects being produced as a protein source, how many insects or how much protein is produced from those insects in comparison to how much Frass is then produced?
Yeah, roughly each gram of protein, we produce 4 gram of Frass. That's like a huge amount of Frass that is produced for each gram of protein. But on the other hand, we see the circular economy concept here, but this is mostly produced from food waste. In UK, we are trying to reduce the food waste, and this project is all about like reducing the food waste in supermarkets. So we worked with Maurice during my postdoctoral time. So we took all this food waste, like basically the fruits and vegetables, so which was about to be thrown in or dumped. Like so, we avoided that, and that has been converted into a high value protein. And this protein is like replacing salmon, fish, soy protein. So, which in turn you're reducing the input of soya into the country, which is like import is reduced. So you are reducing the food waste, the import is reduced, and in turn you're replacing it with an artificial fertilizer. Is the whole picture, and like the amount of carbon footprints associated with each step is massive compared to that of one as a fertilizer by itself. So yeah.
So carbon footprint is often discussed at the moment. What is the carbon footprint like for Frass?
There are few studies has been conducted about the carbon footprinting associated with this what do you call the insect. But again, it depends upon the insect or species what you use as well as the feed materials. But most of this carbon is associated with biogenic carbon, so it's a bit of a question to be answered at this point. But when you look at the overall picture or like a wider picture, when I compared this insect protein compared to the traditional protein of a beef or a pork, the water usage, the water footprint, as well as the feed time, what we use here is like very less compared to that of the traditional protein. On the other hand, this is really happening in a very short time period. Like for example, like from egg of a larvae to hatching to the maximum amount of the maximum big larvae. What I'm talking about is like this larvae just keep feeding, so it's usually 28 days. For example, if I wanted to compare in size, like you can compare a mouse which was converted into an elephant within 28 days. That's what it happens, because you just get a very small micro millimeter egg, and that is converted into a larvae within 28 days. And that is like during this process it converts all this waste material into feed, as well as like the protein, high value protein, as well as the frost, which we can use as a fertilizer.
I quite like that analogy from a mouse to an elephant. It paints a picture of how quickly it changes, because it is a very long process in the livestock industry, making that protein in comparison. So there'll be plenty produced if we all start eating more insects in the future.
Yeah, it will be. There are quite lots of nice crisps around in London, and there is one cafe in Edinburgh that serves some edible insects as well. Like it would be nice to try if you want to go.
How about the pH of Frass?
Oh, again, pH of the frost is slightly acidic, but however, it varies depending upon the material what we use. For example, if we use more citric materials like citric fruits as their feed material for the larvae, it's going to be more acidic. But it's usually acidic to neutral. It's not very acidic, slightly acidic to neutral. So that's what the pH of a frost will be.
So if it's kind of slightly acidic to neutral, that's probably where farmers are wanting their fields to be, rather than it being a lower pH and pulling the pH down further.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But like when we applied frost in field, their buffering capacity is not that higher. So you can't expect them to be acting on a same year. So this has to be repeated application of Frass for years to bring down the pH. So it's not going to be happening in a year of application, but definitely compared to a artificial fertilizer, like this kind of brings the pH slightly lower. So maybe in long term, it might have a liming effect, but like further, we need studies to be commenting on that.
But even if it doesn't have a liming effect, it's not encouraging it to reduce the pH if you keep applying it.
I hope so, and I think so. Like we have done few field trials, and that's what it suggests so far. So we need few more studies to be conducted because soil is a very complex material, and its buffering capacity is huge compared to that of like what we do it in glass houses. So yeah, it's really hard to comment at this time.
So for the field trials that have been carried out, what has been looked at?
So far, like we have conducted field trials on lettuce and cabbage plant in Warwick, and currently we moved towards like using them for wheat and barley plants, winter wheat and spring barley plants in SIUC. So in SIUC, the trial is this is the first year, so it's still there, and like we are moving towards the yield. So we haven't got the yield data yet, but it looks promising that Frass has a positive effect, but definitely not going to be replacing the chemical fertilizer 100%, but like we are thinking how much we are working on how much we could replace the chemical fertilizer. So that's what the project is all about, and we are working on that. So this is a 2 years project, and we will be conducting another year of field trial, so that like we have a bit more confidence on how the performance of the Frass would be on a cereal crop.
Have there been any negative effects found?
Yeah. When you apply Frass at the higher concentration, it definitely has phytotoxic effect. So this phytotoxic effect might be due to the possibility of ammonia, higher ammonia content in it, or the chitin as well, because chitin kind of primes the plant. It says the plant is in danger, and that's how it's going to produce more enzymes to protect itself. So if it does overly on that, plants is not going to produce their energy to growth. Instead, they will try to channel their energy more towards protection, protecting it from disease. So this is what we don't want to happen. So, however, the phytotoxic effect depends upon what plant we use and what soil type you use. So the concentration is the key here. So it depends upon what plant it is. For example, in lettuce is a bit more sensitive to Frass compared to that of cabbage. Cabbage can take up more Frass compared to lettuce. So we have to do more studies in order to find what's the sweet spot for each plant and like what's the sweet spot for the Frass to be utilized up.
So it does sound like there's plenty of work still to be happening to go and just iron out the details and how it will work. But it's good to hear that there is a study looking at it in wheat and barley at the moment. And it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out once it's finished in another year or so's time.
I hope so. I hope it's going to be some positive effect. And like it looks like a positive effect on physiological activities so far. Like the height of the plants was slightly better compared to the other concentration, but like we still need the yield data to be commenting on that.
Lachlan, were you involved in doing some measurements in the field?
Yes, I was. Our wheat and spring barley trial is being run at our trial sites at Southfield near Dalkeith and Oakridge Farm near Broxburn. The sites are both reasonably heavy kind of land, and the wheat and the spring barley both have had top dressings of the Frass applied. This was through the time when we actually got the grant was after we'd been sown, but also there was the quite kind of exciting opportunity to be able to see that if having almost a carpet of the Frass down on top of the soil with the wheat and the barley growing through it, if the possible at the higher replacements of Frass the lack of any splash diseases up the plant, such as wrinkle in spring barley or Septorian wheat, and then also eye spot, particularly in wheat, as the stem is growing up through the frass, if the kind of concentration of chitins at these points in the plant will have any impact on dampening down the diseases. As Arthy said, we've not been able to get through the data just yet, but once that's coupled with the yield data as well as the growth data that some of which we do have, then we can hopefully start drawing some interesting conclusions.
So when did you apply Frass to the cereals?
So the Frass was applied to both winter wheat and spring barley at stem extension. This was the time when the plant really needs it the most. So we're hoping to get the nitrogen down into the ground and into the plant at the time that it needs it to help with getting any data on the physiological side of things.
You said that you're wanting it applied to the plant at the time that it's needing it. How long does it take to break down Frass? What's the kind of consistency of it, just to get an idea of how quickly it would break down as well?
That's a good, interesting point. The two different types of Frass that we had, one derived from fruit and one derived from brewer spent grains. The fruit was quite fine, almost kind of a composty. I really liked kind of compost in texture. It was quite small, kind of particle size. So we would, when we were looking at that, we would have thought that would have broken down quite quickly. In the brewer spent grains, there was still quite a lot of the barley husks kicking around in it. So they would have taken a bit longer to break down. And when we had our trials open night at SRUC Field in June, you could still see quite easily which plot had the brewer spent grains applied to it, because there was grains still kind of sitting on top of the surface. So the availability of that would be greater with the fruit derived Frass than the brewer spent grains Frass, and we've seen a little bit of that in the fruit Frass being ever so slightly taller than the brewer spent grains. Not much difference between the tillers, but there's a slight height difference between the types at their different replacements.
So potentially the chitin might be having more of an impact than the nutritional value, if it's taking a bit longer to break down, just when you applied it at that time.
At this point, we are just trying to apply that, like something similar to that of when we apply the nitrogen, the chemical fertilizer, to see how it works, to get a baseline idea. And we would really like to know how it degrades and how the nutrient is released eventually, so that we can tailor its application. What you said is chitin's effect will be more, but chitin is all made up of nitrogen as well. So once it starts to degrade, usually Frass degrades quite quickly because its carbon to nitrogen ratio was around 18 to 21, so it kind of quickly degrades. So it also degrades the chitin in it, so which has mostly nitrogen in that, so in its chain. So yeah, at this point we are trying to apply them exactly at the time where you apply the chemical fertilizer and see how this affects. And the further studies will be either we will be applying earlier, so that we can see, can we match the nutrient release as well as the plant's demand at the right time. So that's the ultimate aim, to see the nutrient release and match them with the plant's demand. So that's what we are currently working on.
It sounds like it's something that is very interesting, but it seems like it needs another few years of research before there's a chance for it to be practically applied by a farmer in the field.
Yeah, it will be definitely, because it's a complex material. Again, it's not just a nitrogen by itself to see how it degrades quickly, but it's a complex material, and we need few more years to look at degradation pattern and other things, and nutrient release pattern as well, and we have to match that accordingly. So that's what we are currently working on.
It's very interesting, and by the time you figured out that, maybe we will all be eating a lot more insects to keep producing more of the material.
Oh, that sounds really nice, actually. Yeah. Hopefully, we encourage people to eat more insects.
It'll also take a while for it to be figured out where it can fit into agriculture. At this time, we think it can be an equivalent to FYM. Whether the availability of it depends if agriculture will get the first call on it. I believe there's applications for it there is applications for it in horticulture, as Arthy's touched upon, but also in glasshouses, vertical farms, and also as biorhythmic digesters. There's also the slight problem at the moment that the companies that produce Frass, they're all quite new, and as with a lot of new companies, if they think they've got something, then they think it's worth the world. When it comes to our agriculture's FYM, our value on it is it's coming out of the shed and it's going on the field. There's very little value in it. You could maybe sell it for £10 per tonne. Currently, the Frass is being marketed. Certainly, the Frass that we're buying for our trial is marketed at £3,500 per tonne.
Ouch.
So there's a long way for the companies to actually kind of see what it is they've got.
It is a byproduct at the end of the day, but it's whether they're going to keep classing it as a very important product or start viewing it as a byproduct that they just need to get rid of.
Yeah. It is a huge amount of waste, and they have to deal with it. And so they will be sending it, partly because the cost is high for our trials, basically because we are very specific about the feed, what we want. So they are having the feed charges associated with it. But like if you look at the picture in a wider view of like utilizing just a waste, I don't think you will be adding the value of feed materials here. But at this trial, for time being, we are like very tailored with what feed we wanted and like how it works. So that's why at this point the cost is a bit higher. But like I don't even think the company will sell it at the same cost to the farmers, because they will be looking at that more like a byproduct and they wanted to get rid of it. So yeah.
Yeah, price is going to have to come down a lot for the farmers, even at that. So it'll be interesting to see if the market for the insect protein grows. If they're wanting to get rid of it more and more, I'm happy to drop the prices lower.
Yeah, I hope that's going to happen eventually. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
No, that has been very interesting. Thank you, Arthy and Lachlan. I've definitely learnt a lot today.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you very much. It's really nice talking to you, and like it would be good to talk about Frass always. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of CropCast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please subscribe and follow so you don't miss the next episode. You may also enjoy some of our other Farm Advisory Service podcasts. This podcast was presented by myself, Tiffany Stephenson, produced by George Gauley, edited by Cameron Waugh, with executive producers Kirstyn Blackwood and Kerry Hammond. Come back next month on the 16th of September to hear the next episode with Mark Boucher-Gibbs.
The Farm Advisory Service podcast. Audio advice on livestock, crops and soils, environment, rural business and more. Brought to you in association with the Scottish Government.